Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy. This is Joseph, and
Guys,
we are so excited to be talking more about the Wheel of Time. So this is the Nerd Morning Show, a place where we celebrate nerd culture by talking about books, video games, comics, and other nerdy things. And we have been doing this like read marathon race, not race, experience with the Wheel of Time. To just be excited about the new show and to dive into this amazing, amazing story.
and it is a deep dive, especially how
Yeah.
fast we're going through it. You said earlier, and you're totally right, going through it this fast, sometimes it's easier to grab a few of the little connections that you just kind of gloss over when you're just reading it at a normal pace. So it's been fun.
Good. One of the things that I've seen is that Robert Jordan is a master of foreshadowing. I mean, he had got a map, like a huge map, and had to figure out a lot of these things. And clearly, like, he is a big world builder, and because of that, he is excited about mapping stuff out. Like, that's a part of the fun when you do this style of epic story. But oh man, I'm always seeing like, oh, well, that's another thing they're setting up there. Oh, that's setting up the thing there. Or really interesting parallels, like when Rand goes and claims Kalendor at Tyr. This is back with like the end of book 2, or book 3. Book 3. That's book 3.
I was like, wait a minute.
Nope. The
Dragon Reborn.
Falma was the battle in that one. But like Perrin goes into the Wolf Dream to fight. He's going after Fael, and these other people are kind of on this human plane, and Rand is fighting the big bad and needs help and support from everyone in order to really be successful. And I'm like, that parallels,
you had to bring
all of that to the final battle. Like that was like, Perrin going into the Wolf Dream, which is what he, what his duty is,
his place.
Matt being the hero, like, like some of those things, I'm just like, this paralleled beautifully the moment he becomes the dragon. Really, he claims that role for himself instead of it being thrust on him, which is like the first
couple books.
Like that moment paralleled beautifully the moment when he like fulfills the prophecy, and I'm just like, oh, I love how there's this mirror here. And
it builds.
Anyways, so many cool things. I love diving into this. Where are you right now in your reading, and like what's been some big things from you?
I'm halfway through Fires of Heaven, got all the way through Shadow Rising. My absolute favorite in the series still is the 4th book.
I keep on hearing this. I posted a picture of it on Instagram going like, I finished this book, going through the series, and I heard several people that were like, hey, this is my favorite one.
It's so good.
It's interesting to read those two back to back because in Fires of Heaven, it's pretty much one story. There are jumps, obviously, to other perspectives, but we really do follow like one mission with Rand and his quest, and we do get the perspective of Matt, and we get perspective of Elaine, and they do all those things, but really it's like a single funnel.
The biggest part is Rand leaving the waste and taking the Aiel and all of the craziness.
Where the 4th book, Shadows Rising, is really 4 distinct stories.
It is.
And you have each of these, and they have their full arcs and their full experiences, and all that stuff is very clear, like, and how it's divided. And I'm just like, it's been fascinated with the organization, the structure of the books. And that's just an interesting contrast, because we do have this like spreading of different lines that get woven together and then they spread out. And I'll use the weaving analogy because I might as well.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
Right. As Moraine would always say. I don't know. I think that's amazing. And honestly, truly masterful. I think very few writers could do this and do it successfully.
And probably one of the very few who has developed those storytelling chops is the one they brought in to finish the story,
yes,
Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
So to have so many paths and so many things that need to influence everything else in other places. To do that without a huge outline and plotting, I don't think you could do it.
No. This is not a style of story for those people who are like, I think they call them like pantsers, right? They go by the seat of their pants and they write these stories, which like is a fun way to write. When I dabble in my writing experiences, I enjoy doing that. But when you're seriously diving into something this intricate,
this massive,
no, you've got maps and you've got diagrams. It's like kind of like one of those like murder scenes is kind of what I see, is kind of like how they're solving the murder mystery and they got all the like little things linking across
sure.
That's pretty much like how I imagine Robert Jordan's experience while he was outlining and mapping it all. It probably looked completely different, but that's what I see right here. That's my headcanon of this experience. Well, there is some really interesting things in those bits of the stories that you've reached to. Myself, I'm in the Lord of Chaos, book 6, so just a little bit ahead. But diving in with like 4 and 5, some big things with that.
Yes. The beginning of bringing the nations behind Rand, not just his little group of friends. He's bringing in nations and he's got an idea in his head. That's kind of where I'm at. And Moraine finally says, I can't not help you, so I will help you your way.
Yes.
And she kind of submits to him with that. And now he's learning how to interact with nations. He's learning some of the cultures and how to work within those cultures when it works, or when he needs to push them aside when they're not going to work for him. So I'm at the point where we're really starting to see him become the leader. Is this part of it?
And I think what's really interesting that is we do see these characters really grow and change. And they have so much responsibility to assume. And with Rand, like a lot of the people say like taking countries isn't anywhere inside of the prophecies. But how in the world is he supposed to affect the world in such a massive way without influencing the nations? And he would love to say, hey, we've got your back, we're going to help you do what you need to do. And he's not there to take thrones.
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want it.
He knows he needs to. But
if there was somebody there that was on the throne and said, hey, we got your back, you come here when you need, you leave when you need, save the world for us, we got you, he'd be like, sweet, and he would move on. Like he's not there to conquer, he's conquering because he has to. And that's one of the things that's interesting, is he starts to see, I have this immense responsibility and I have to use people, I have to do these things in order to do what I have got to do. And one of the big things is the Forsaken, they're collecting countries too. And he's got to collect countries in order to fight them, because he has countries he's got to fight in order to survive the Forsaken who are hunting them. And they're going to saying, we're gathering this army and then we're going to go get you. And he's got to say, I've got to be ready, because if I'm not, I will lose. And that's a heavy burden. And we see that like darkening that has that effect on him, and that's kind of really starting to grow out in these stories right here.
You're getting to the point where he's actually starting to go mad.
Yes.
So I'm at the very beginning of it, where he's just starting to see like But yeah, when
Yeah.
he truly is going crazy, I think that's where a lot of people kind of lose it. Like, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah.
But understanding where it's going to end up,
Mm-hmm.
that helps. It helps
Yes.
to know that he fixes it. He does, but we have to get through it
Yeah. But
to get
also,
there.
like, it's powerful because, I don't know. Again, I mentioned this at other ones that we've done. Is the battles that we face so much in this world are the battles with our own selves,
Right?
and
Those are the hardest ones.
and for him, he's got
Seriously.
this internal voice, right? He's got the
Literally.
right. No, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like a big thing. We sometimes have that little voice, that says negative things to us, or
Uh-huh.
we've got these urges to do something that we know we shouldn't do, or whatever. Like, we have these types of things that we battle in ourselves, and like, here he's got someone who wants to seize the power against himself to
Uh-huh.
go and take out somebody who he feels threatened by. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I have to hold this control. And
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know, it's not that extreme for us in our lives, for most everybody, I guess.
Right.
But like, it's an interesting thing, and he has to like face that battle, that and overcome. And that battle is, I think, tremendously powerful. I know a lot of people go, oh, Rand, he's starting to like, he gets angry and grumpy, and he's starting to use people, and I hate all those things, and he goes crazy, and I don't like that. And he's got a lot that he has to deal with, and
Yeah.
I get where they're coming from, but I just love him so much.
And that's one of the strengths of fantasy,
Uh-huh.
really, I think, over other forms of storytelling, is we can excuse me, we can see some of those deeper things. It's part of this story over here,
Yeah.
but if we look beyond just the story and say, you know what, yeah, that was terrible.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's just a story, but they pulled through it. You know what, I can pull through what I'm facing too.
Yeah.
That can be a huge strength.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're going to fight demons, so teach us about dragons, and let us,
Uh-huh.
conquer our own dragons in our minds, and then we can conquer them in our lives. And that's a powerful thing that,
Oh yes.
I mean, like, one of the big things, like, people like fantasy stories or superheroes or whatever, is they look at somebody and say, they did it, I can do it, I'm going to be like that person. And are they
Yep.
really going to go and wield a sword and conquer, their demons? Maybe not physically, but
Yeah,
maybe if they start to imagine that a little bit, that's enough power that they need.
right. And everyone is going to face something hard in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if being inspired by somebody's story helps them,
Mm-hmm.
more the better.
Yeah.
More the better.
Something else that I see that's a parallel is, there's some of the like ways that people interact in fantasy stories. You can really like get a pointed conversation about something without like actually talking about it. One
Uh-huh.
of the things that I think we see here is a bunch of different cultures. I just got to a new place where everyone does duels, and women can murder anybody or any man without any cause, and unless they're proven that that was like without like it was done unjustly, you have to prove that it
Justly
was.
malicious. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
then they're home free. It's part of that belief system and the culture and how things work, and like
Yep.
that's weird to me. That's very different, right?
Right.
But there's like really cool people there, and really crazy people there, and like you see that again with the Aiel, very different culture, with the
Mhm.
people who are the tree killers, open tier. The people in Kyrian are different in how they approach their noblemen, and those types of
Yeah.
things. And Andor, like, the noblemen there are very, very different than like the people in tier.
Oh yeah.
You see that, and I think one of the things in our world is, I'm raised in a particular paradigm, a way of thinking about the world, and it's a positive way, right? Like, it's cool. I obviously have positive associations because it's my culture.
It's what you grew up
Um,
with. Yeah. Right.
but then you go and look around and go, well, that's a different culture, and I can see how other cultures are different and beautiful and unique here in fantasy world, right? And I can
Uh-huh.
go, that's probably true to these other ones. They're different and unique and probably beautiful in their own ways as well, and
Right.
that's a powerful thing. one of the other things, I've got two other ideas here,
Right.
is that like the White Cloaks. Right, the White Cloaks are big in book 4. They've been big throughout, but these are just a group of people that I kind of like have this analogy in my mind of religious fanatics. These are the extremists. They have a certain belief. They see everyone else as being the, like everyone's a dark friend in their perspective, and they will tear through innocence in order to get to that dark friend, right? And this is an extremist point of view, and this is something that we have to like struggle with in our reality. Our groups that are extremists and are very dangerous in this way, but they also have a perspective of somebody who we think is a good guy get dragged into that community and is thinking that he's doing the right thing, and that is an interesting perspective to follow along with a little bit, and how you have to combat and deal with those problems. And then we also have people of power and authority who try to push their power and authority on you. And I see this in the Aes Sedai. They think even kings and queens bow to them and bow to their will. And mostly we see this confrontation with Rand, right?
Yeah, big time, especially coming up.
But like these, I mean, authority, powers of authority, abusing your power, all those types of things are things that we see in real life. And we see power being used very nobly, and we see power being abused in the same organization. And also with them thinking that they're all doing the right thing. And that's a big conversation, right? And I think they do a really interesting job through this story as it goes through. So I don't know, some of the parallels we can get through fantasy that affect how we can see the real world.
Yeah, just to follow up on those points you made, you also see there are good people and there are bad people in every society. Right? In all of the cultures, in all of the main cities and civilizations we go through, there are some very good people, so your normal everyday people who just want to live their lives and get through and take care of their families, and then there are the bad people who, for whatever it is, going against their culture, being selfish, whatever you have, they're the not good people, and that is a little bit different in each society. But you can kind of look into that and say, you know what? Yeah, in every culture, in every belief, in every society, even among some of the crazies or the powerful that are trying to rule everything, there are good and there are bad. And that can really help. It's helped me to take a step back and say, you know what? I can't just say, oh, this people are this. You can't do that. It's not fair to anyone, because there are good and there are extreme in any society. And this book series has helped me see that.
That's an interesting point of view. That's very cool. But clearly also in that there are people that we see and we go, yeah, maybe like with Osmodian, like, he is a big bad, and we get to see him sympathetically, and that's an interesting thing. But that, like, him having good doesn't dismiss that he's a bad guy and ultimately needs taken out, right? And like that's just an interesting thing that we get here, and we can sympathize with people who ultimately, like, they need to go. That's like that's that's a thing. And I don't know, an interesting thing. But well, that's a big aspect of the book 5, right? Is him learning through Osmodian as he's with the Aiel and while they're traveling, and him gaining strength and power and capacity. And all through that as well, we really dive into the Aiel culture, and he's getting instructed by Avienda. Side note, the whole purpose of her being there had nothing to do with him learning. If you really look at what the Wise Ones are doing, they're trying to make Rand as sympathetic to their cause as possible. And having them fall in love is an easy way to have him become sympathetic, and that's makes
and poor
sense.
Avienda, I kind of like this guy, but I'm trying to keep him for my friend over here, but I like him too. And oh no, the relationship stuff they throw in is just amusing.
It is. But, it really is. This is, I think, one of our, like, book 4 and book 5 are our biggest deep dives in the Aiel. Then we kind of move on to other cultures and groups, and we're back to kind of that more Western culture type of fantasy with
a little
kind
bit,
of knights and kings and all that kind of stuff, you know. What's your take on the Aiel? Favorites or most, like, I don't know, interesting things about their culture? What are your thoughts?
I really love their honor system, Jiito, honor and obligation, where if they feel like they have done wrong, their honor has been diminished. They need to go and correct it.
Yeah.
Granted, some of that with the, now we have to fight to the death. I'm not such a big fan of that, but to have the stringent sense of honor so that if you do wrong, you admit it. When Egwene goes to admit to the wise ones, I'm not really an Aes Sedai.
Such a good moment here.
They beat her for like an hour until finally they're like, you understood what you did was wrong. We're moving on, and they forget about it, and it's done.
And that's one of the things that she's blown away by, and she didn't even remember, like, until afterwards, was like, oh yeah, once Toe is met, it's gone, and they do not see it anymore, and that's a big part of them. And if they were to keep on looking at that person wrong because they had Toe and they met their Toe, then they would be in the wrong. And and I think it's interesting, we have in this story, this area, we get somebody who is an Aiel that Rand likes, who kills somebody who had a tattoo that was mirroring one of the dragon tattoos. And for that culture, like, that's a big deal. But they also had been instructed, you do not kill the tree killers.
And it wasn't a just cause based on the laws of the land they were in.
And that Aiel guy goes and says, tell me when. And he goes and gets hung because of his honor. That was important to him enough to die for, was maintaining his honor. And he didn't necessarily feel like he did the wrong thing, but he's like, but he recognizes that he had Toe because of his action. And like, to me, that's pretty extreme.
That's
right? But it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
You have far fewer incidents of theft, of pettiness, things like that, because the culture just says, that's not cool, man.
Yeah.
And you face up to it, you correct it, and you move on.
You own what you did. And that's another thing that's like with Elaine as well. She's like, there's no justification when you have Toe. You accept what you do. You own up to the consequence, and you move on. And I think that's fascinating. It was just a really, really, really cool look, because like, the other people like say, oh, can we spy on them? They're like, we don't spy. Like, there's no honor in spying. Like, there's certain ways that they look at life, and it's a beautiful way. It's problematic in so many ways.
Just like any culture, if we really sit down and think about it.
But there's a lot of beautiful things with it that we get to see. And I just adore them as a fantasy culture and as a group. And I think that Egwene couldn't be who she needs to be without the experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. And she carries that through being Amerlin and everything. And
Rand, like, I think honestly, even though his lessons weren't very like well received, right? He would forget everything, mess up with the culture aspects. I think that he sees honor and obligation in the way that he thinks after that, even though it's not as overtly talked about with his character.
Yeah.
But his obligation, he sees, is doing whatever it takes to get him to defeat the Dark One in the end.
Battle, yeah.
The last battle, Tarmageddon.
His obligation and his honor is to do that. Yep.
Yeah. And I think really he chooses to actually accept that this is his burden because of the IEL. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, he
certainly influences it.
Yeah.
He carries it beforehand, even just being raised by his father. Sounds like his father was a man of honor. You know,
Tanalth Thor is awesome.
In his culture, he was a man of honor, and so he taught Rand to be a man of honor, and that carries through. I've heard people talking about the Two Rivers and how simplistic and old-fashioned and stuff, and that's not
is all true.
It's all
but
true.
It's not the whole story with them.
It's not the whole story, nor is it bad that that's the case, because it is a small town, small community, and historically speaking, smaller communities have tighter value systems, if that's a good way to put it. Right? Family, you're all related, basically. Right?
Sure.
Right? Think about through history, smaller communities, you're probably cousins, second cousins, third cousins with everyone.
Perrin actually talks about some random kid he runs into, and they goes, "Oh yeah, I guess I'm your cousin somehow," and that was a really big moment for him because he thought all of his family was dead.
Right.
But everyone has some type of ties to each other. So
right.
They do mention that in the story.
They have more of those close-knit family-based values. And that comes through Rand's story. So I don't think the show coming up should leave that out or try and change it, because it makes sense, even pulling from history, that would be kind of the case. Whereas some of the other civilizations he goes to, they're bigger cities, they might have different value structures because you're not related to everybody. So, and back to our different cultures conversation, there's a lot of that comes through as well. So I'm really hoping to see in the show, as we've talked about, these different cultures and different value systems, because there's good and bad to all of those. We should try and grab on to as much good as we can. And if it's not needed or doesn't fit with your value system, okay, let it go. Right? That's what I've gotten from that. I think it's great.
That's really good. Oh man, I just have been absolutely loving my read through. I've been trying to find every opportunity I can to keep on going through and diving into the story and thinking back and doing reviews and discussing this so much. And I know I'm tremendously excited for the series. I think, like Brandon Sanderson talked about, it is going to maybe take a look at it as a different weaving of the wheel, right? As we have a lot of the different slices. I think if you see things inside of the story that go, it's not quite the same, like multiverse it. Like it's
we're used to that already. We got that going. That's good.
Like both of them are going to be able to exist, and I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm excited for it, and I don't know. Like I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for joining.
Always fun.
Yes. Any last minute thoughts for you before we wrap up?
That's all I've got today.
All right, perfect. We covered everything. I am so grateful for you joining in, and anyone who has thoughts or ideas, definitely put those in the comments section. Love to hear what you have to say about either the things that we discussed or these couple of stories here. And we'll be doing more of these, so stay tuned for more Wheel of Time conversations. Thank you all for joining in. Again, Joseph, thank you. And
see you next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.